Universe, I love you more than myself, baby. He has a wisdom bone on there. See this? This is the wisdom bone. That's the wisdom bone. Has a lot of wisdom because he is the Buddha. So, making a video for my friends Ellen and Tony. And there's another guy on my other channel, but he did not come to my new channel. I don't know, probably busy. So I am very deeply grateful that I found 3 people who like me, who think that my videos are worthwhile watching. So make videos too, everyone, you know. Get into it and take your time and respond in video form. The more we make videos about the important subjects, the more people do it, the more it gets around the globe, and the more people will get into it and get interested in it. Not just one person talking about it. And I do address some issues that very few people talk about it, actually. And that's why I make the videos, because I don't see enough people in the world talking about overpopulation, for example. It's a taboo subject. And people are terrified to death to address that. Particularly politicians, even if they talked about this in their private circles, which I don't know if they do, but if they did, they would not carry this outside into the public domain in any way, because the paparazzis will catch onto this like sharks biting into pieces of meat. And they will carry it straight to the corporate agenda, to Richard Berman and the likes, all the market psychologists, and they're going to be using that as bait for more slander and so on. And you know how they do it, how they take the most ridiculous things and create a gourmet meal of slander out of it. So they can just turn about any kind of subject into a slanderous campaign. So we have to become very crystal clear about this. And the corporations use religion to get their way. They can't use free thinking, of course. That would not work, because then people would be free thinking. They would not buy into anything that they say. But they use religion, and they use it like I use my computer, you know. So, but the majority of humans on this planet don't know this, and I think it's about time now that the word gets around and that people really get to understand how much the corporations are using religion, how they're driving the religion golf cart, if you want, yeah. So they're driving that golf cart around the golf course of life, and they're going to get into your brain and into your needs and into your aspirations, and they'll make you dependent on the religion and on their products, which is, you know, it's the same thing basically. You know, they're selling you things, they're selling you religion, they're selling you their products. It always goes together. We need to get away from consumerism of any sort, of mental consumerism as well as physical consumerism. We want to break free of this. We don't want to overload our homes with mountains of garbage anymore. We want to minimalize. We want to become minimalist. We want to live like the Japanese live, kaizen, never-ending improvement. And that is my philosophy for my life, for sure. And it's not always been easy. I've been stuck a lot. I've been moving forward in snail pace sometimes, and it felt horrible. But then there were times where I was sprinting forward faster, and it would go back and forth, you know. For each crisis I had a whole lot more clarity, and I would feel like, okay, now I was able to make big steps forward for a while, and then it would slow down and stagnate again, and it goes like in cycles like this, and that's just how it is. We don't need to be in resistance to it. We need to not beat ourselves up. If things are slowing down, they're gonna speed up again later on. The Buddhists always say everything is going to pass. Every hardship, you know, every hardship situation that we're in is eventually going to dissolve, and we enter new land. And it's hard to see that in times of extreme agony, which I have been in, and it felt like it would never go away. No, I felt like when I had the panic attack, I felt like this is it. I'm going to be stuck in this now for the rest of my life, for the next 50 years or so. That's how it felt. And that didn't feel too good, of course. And I asked my husband every day to hold my hand, to just alleviate the pain just a little bit. It was pretty tough, and I don't wish this on anyone. That's the worst torture anybody can possibly experience. It's a panic attack of the worst kind. So many thoughts going through my head. I don't even know where to start. I want to stay focused on one subject and get into it in more depth, and not fly over it and then get from one subject to another and jump, and that's just very distracting. It's not very good. So I want to focus myself. That's very hard for me to do, extremely hard, because I have thousands of thoughts at the same time, and they always tie in with everything, and I want to just explore it all, the entire big picture at once. You know, I want to shed light on that big picture from the bird view, and I want to show you all how everything is tying in with one another. Most people just don't have the time to introspect and overlook and make the connections between all these things. Most people are tied up in their jobs, they have responsibilities, and that's okay, you know. That's why I make these videos, because I do have the time to do it. I have time. Like that comedian in Germany, Helge Schneider. Helge has time. Helge hat Zeit, and he's hanging his head out of the window, and he looks a little bit like an older lady with a broom in his hand, and he sits there. That's what a lot of older people do in Germany. They sit by the window and look out to the street. I saw that in East Berlin. A lot of old ladies sitting by the window looking out to see what's going on, and I waved to every one of them. It was neat, right after the wall came down. That was pretty crazy to rent an apartment in East Berlin after the wall came down. But it was interesting. It's like a completely different world. I had to experience that. It was rough, but it was interesting. It was more than a museum visit. It was like living in the museum. Now I'm jumping off the subject again. It is raining outside, and the rain was desperately needed, and I'm absolutely happy to see this, and it feels awesome, and it is wonderful. And the owl was there last night and made hoo hoo. It feels so good. I haven't heard the frogs in a while, and that always worries me, because I don't know what people are doing, if they're dumping stuff into the watersheds. which happened a couple years ago, and I thought I wasn't gonna. It tore me down. I thought I was gonna lose my mind. I don't know why they do it. This is some kind of Republican temper tantrum, or just total neglectance, or total lack of care. Just trashing things because they don't want to take care of it. It's like what Julia Hill said: nothing we throw away goes away. Because there is no away. Nothing goes away. But we have to deal with our trash items, waste items, in the utmost, highest responsibility we can. We have to dispose of it safely. It has to go to places that are designated for this, and that might recycle things, that might be able to transform it into something safe, or make something out of it for further use, or just deposit it in a safe place where it does not leach into our watersheds and groundwater. That's absolutely extremely important. Very few people address this. It's not mainstream, and that's why I make the videos, because we can't talk enough about this particular subject, because there's just so much negligence in the world going on out of people not knowing it. So it's very important. I want to hear the frogs. The frogs are a sign of health in any kind of environment, and when I don't hear the frogs, I get very worried, and it makes me very depressed. Every one of us needs this planet to breathe, and to clean itself, and to be healthy, and to have a strong immune system. The entire environment is like an organism. It's like a gigantic organism that has its own immune balance. And if we throw obstacles into it, then it can't do its cleaning process good enough, and it gets overwhelmed, and then imbalances start to happen in it. So that's why it is absolutely critically important that people become aware about this, about these mechanisms, these interactions. It's absolutely critical. The biggest problem we have today is overpopulation, and Bindi Irwin has been talking about this courageously, and she is very young, 17, and she does not understand that most people are not thinking the way she does. They don't reason the way she does. They are not happy the way she is. They are not in total abundance the way she is, and she's the total role model for everybody. But unfortunately, people are so messed up that they don't see her as a role model. Instead, they like to dump their insults on her and say very disrespectful things about her. And of course, the corporations again are putting their sneaky, invisible, where nobody knows where it started, their little hate campaigns, throwing that into the world, and then the Republican eat it up like that's like part of their belief system and their core values. Or 300 years back in time, people would not think that's a taboo to talk about overpopulation. Back then they didn't have overpopulation, but they wouldn't see this as a taboo subject. 300 years ago, there was only a fraction of the population we have today, and that should tell us something. That should tell us that 300 years ago or so, or even at the time of Friedrich Nietzsche, 1880, it wasn't a threat at all yet. But they didn't realize it was like 5 minutes before 12 already. In that sense, they should have already started paying attention at that time. Rudolf Steiner talked about it at the turn of the century, about all of these consequences that are going to be happening. In particular, with an increased population, we will have also agricultural methods that are not good for planet Earth, which were coming in the 50s, of course. All of these terrible things that were introduced, like all these terrible chemicals that were introduced to the world, all kinds of different chemicals, from pesticides to pharmaceuticals. The 50s was really a setback for humanity, and with that came all kinds of horrendous problems and scars. We're still seeing the scars of it now. There are people who are rethinking about this, but it is a slow process of catching on for most people. And even the EPA, it cannot be fully trusted, because they have people in there that are corruptible, that take bribes, and that will declare something safe that isn't safe at all. Something, for example, like glyphosate, that has been banned in Europe, all over Europe, already for several years, but it's still used here in form of Roundup. That's glyphosate, and they're even pumping it into trees, which makes absolutely, that helps nothing. The tree is infested, the oak trees are infested with bark beetles. That's because they're having a mold, and that mold in turn was caused by pollution. The trees' immune systems are completely unbalanced. Pumping glyphosate into the trees is not helping the trees at all. It just causes severe environmental pollution and damage. And that's why it was outlawed in Europe. But in this country, the corporations, they bribe their way through, and then even dangerous things that are highly toxic and carcinogenic, they will stay on the market. And it's extremely toxic for animals and people, and I advise everybody to become very clear about this and do some researching. And I wrote a long article. I can put the link under the video. I wrote this article. Took me about several months to write it, and then I've been updating it, and I have been refining it and made it even longer. So it's very important information that I put into it, that I have researched about the dangers of the different pesticides and pesticides in general. That it's not the solution at all. So, but the increased population brings about with it increased pollution, and if it wasn't for the pollution, then the population problem would not be near as pressing. But most people are not educated, and most people are poor, and they're struggling to survive on a daily basis. They don't have any time or any interest in spending time on the internet researching things, and they're not presented with factual things on TV and in those hours that they're coming home and sitting on their recliner chair with their beer and watching TV. So the prime time TV is not presenting people with any kind of factual, wholesome, and progressive information at all. It's presenting people with very rudimentary hormonal type of needs, subjects, and that isn't getting us anywhere, and it's keeping people deliberately dumb and blissfully unknowledgeable. And not just that, it presents people with anti-information, straightforward anti-information, brazen right into our face. So, but they get away with it because they got so much financial leverage over things. Corporate mafia type of mafia type of leverage over other people and institutions, and the media in particularly, which is a terrible pity. And that's why I tell everybody, don't watch TV anymore. Only watch films that you chose on YouTube or other video websites. So it's up to the consumer, unfortunately, and that's where the catch is, because most consumers are not aware and don't want to become aware. So yeah, that's what causes the real severe problems with this. That causes a severe imbalance in the ecosystem, and it will catch up with us when shit really hits the fan. That's when usually when they start suffocating because they don't have air to breathe anymore. Then people go, oh, maybe we should do something. Maybe we should become more aware and not log so many trees, or not pump glyphosate into oak trees or other trees that are dying. Maybe that would be a start, right? But by the time we have like 50% less oxygen, that's when things are already getting drastic. And when we have that, then it's like a way of no return, basically. We can't re-terraform Earth as fast as we will need it in order to get our oxygen. I mean, some rich people, they all have their oxygen manufacturing plants and stuff like this, where they have oxygen pumped into their underground palaces or something like that, and that's going to be happening. But the rest of the world, the animals and the people, they're going to be left out there to suffocate to death. So it's also not going to be benefiting the real rich people, because then they can't even come out of these underground enclosures anymore. If they don't have forests and trees to look at and smell and feel and breathe, then their quality of life will be diminished as well. It's no fun to live in an underground, like a disaster bunker or something. Some people have small ones, some people have gigantic disaster bunkers. But do you want to live for the rest of your life in an underground world, where you don't see the blue sky anymore, and the forests and all of this, and the owls and all of this, Where do you want everything to become a desolate waste place? That's my question to the masses out there, to the populous body. Is your blissful ignorance that much more important than paying attention to what's going on behind the scenes, actually, what's actually happening every single second that is passing? More pollution is being committed on this planet, and we want to just watch the TV and not pay any attention and close our eyes and say everything is cool because the church says so. That's not going to help anything. It's not going to solve any problem at all. In order to solve problems, we have to look at the problems first. We have to become fully aware of it, and we have to be fully aware of what each person can do to solve these problems. Back to overpopulation. It is a very serious problem, even if all people were conscious about the environment. It would be a whole lot better. It would be a completely different world. And if everybody was polite, and if everybody was supportive of the other animal and person, so of the animal person and the human person. So then we would have a much better life, every one of us, and we wouldn't be sitting like sardines and we would be spreading out, and everybody would have a much nicer place to live in, and it would be the whole thing. I don't even know where to start. I mean, everything would be better. That'd be an ideal. But still, even in that situation, if we just keep on increasing our population at the rate that we're doing right now, then it would not be sustainable in any way. It would eventually cause severe imbalances, even if everybody was living consciously. So it would still create imbalances, and it would still create incredible air problems, pollution, still would cause CO2, even if people weren't driving cars or weren't breeding more cows. So it would still eventually cause CO2 because of the gases that humans produce. They're biological organism, just like the cows are, and they produce maybe not as many gases, but like one person is like a quarter of a cow or something. Yeah, so but it would be a quarter of that, and eventually if there's enough people, it will cause severe CO2 pollution because of methane gases, and then also the way corpses are disposed. You know, that's another thing. Is, I mean, if we did it all right, we could manage. Even with that increase, we could manage for a little longer. But still, eventually, it would catch up with its overpopulation problem and show its effects nevertheless. So overpopulation is unsustainable in any way, in any scenario, and it just leads to incredible hardship and depression and suffocation, and this is not going to work, this is not going to go anywhere, and it has to be addressed. The first step is to look at it as a problem, to recognize it as a problem, and not dismiss it as a conspiracy theory that I hear all the time, that I hear people say that overpopulation is some kind of conspiracy from the elites because they want to get rid of people. No, no. The elites, the corporate elite, they want as many people as possible because they make money on people. I hope that makes sense. I hope that clears it up. Because right there it says that these conspiracy theories are completely false. And they're all Christian based, of course. Christian conspiracy theories. And that David Icke, I don't trust him at all. I don't know what he's up to. You know. So because his conspiracy theory is very much in sync with the Christian conspiracy theories. The only difference is that he throws aliens into it. David Icke has his reptilians in this conspiracy, and that is extreme ayahuasca damage that he has done to his brain when he was in the Amazon rainforest. And people praise ayahuasca a lot. It's a toxic plant, and it will completely damage and scar your brain. And people have died from it. Many people have died from it. And it is extremely, extremely dangerous. I am never going to take hallucinogenic drugs. Also because my brain doesn't require any creativity boost. So I'm already flowing over with that stuff, and I'm already highly, highly, highly sensitive and perceptive. And if I did any more of that, I would go crazy, I would freak out, it would not be positive. And it's also damaging. All of these hallucinogenic drugs, they're very damaging, and not just to highly sensitive people, but also to anyone else who may not be sensitive at all or may not be creative. it's damaging to them too. They might have this jolt of creativity in that moment, but then later on it wears off, and damage is done in either way. And that's why it is not a good idea to take hallucinogenic drugs. It really messes up the nervous system, and it leaves permanent scars in people. And I've seen this. I've seen it with so many people that are in their 60s today that have overdone it during the hippie era. And these people, they may be interesting to talk to, and they may be a trip by themselves to talk to, but when it comes to responsibility and trusting them with certain things, I can't, because their perception is completely messed up. They are no longer capable of handling anything, of managing anything, including their own lives, even the simplest tasks. They're basically 5150. They need to be in a halfway house, because many of them are homeless, many of them, and I talk to a lot of homeless people. I talk to all of them, and because I want to know how they're doing and how they got there and what's going on in their brains. Many of them are very nice and humble people, much nicer than the average person that you meet at Walmart, who is not going to be willing to talk to you at all. So, but then there are some mean homeless people, of course, too, and I mean, they come in all kinds of variations. But the ones who have overdone it during the 60s and 70s with the hallucinogenic drugs, those people they are not capable of handling their lives at all. They spend their money right away. They don't plan into the future. They can't be trusted. They can't be relied on with anything. And that's a pity, you know, and they're just can't think at all straight. And so why should I ever do something like this to my precious brain? I need my precious brain to be unscarred, to be healthy, and have the blood flow through, and have the cells supplied with nutrients and oxygen, so that I can think clearly and focus. Focusing's not easy. I'm still learning it. And so that I have the ability to plan into the future and to know what I'm doing every step in the way. And I have a lot of dreams already where I'm driving a motorhome, or I'm like in the back of the motorhome and the motorhome is driving itself. And then of course the brakes fail. It's always like this. And then my last dream last night was I was in the back of the motorhome and it drove down a hill and the brakes failed, and I had to run real quickly to the front, and I had to apply every brake there was and steer the motorhome to the right side and hope that it would stop and not fall into the ditch over to the right, and somehow be able to stop there and keep it there at least for a moment until it can be transported away. And the fear of people hollering at me and blaming me for this and all of these is like very symbolic for my life, you know, like holding responsibility for things and at the same time not feeling too stable about it, but giving my 150% of learning and progressing as I go. So, and you know, if we all did that, things could become better very quickly, I think, if we all were really interested in taking full charge of our lives. It would also be very empowering for a lot of people who have never felt empowered, who are always like they're only interested to lay their lives into the hands of someone else. It's either Rajneesh, you know, they give their possessions to Rajneesh. He says, give up your possessions, give it all to me. And so people don't even think about that statement alone. You know. So they lay their lives into someone else's hands, and that isn't going anywhere. They are not in charge of their lives, and a lot of people don't want to be in charge of their lives. It feels scary, or it feels groundless or something, but that's exactly where each of us needs to go. And if everyone had their life together and was in charge of their lives, then they would feel empowered. They wouldn't have so much the need to put other people down anymore, because then they would feel more like they feel more worthy in when they look at themselves. So they feel more accomplished and more empowered. Then they wouldn't have any need at all to make someone else's life hard, or to throw wedges into someone else's life and then think they somehow got even with whoever, you know. So that wouldn't be necessary, and I'm trying to tell people this, and I've been making so many videos about this on my other channel also, about this empowerment. But I feel like a lot of people, they're not receptive at all. So I made a lot of videos about this for people, for different people on my other channel, and I don't know if they ever thought about what I said and not misunderstood it as me. And like, they're always projecting, you know, they're trying to make someone else feel bad, so they will project that I am only doing this video to make them feel bad about themselves. But it's exactly the opposite. I want to make them feel good, but it's so easily misunderstood when they're coming from such a different perspective of things. That's why it is so incredibly important that every one of us dissolves this pride thing. Pride is ego, you know. Dissolve the pride. I never had pride my whole life, so I'm very grateful for that, because that would have only stood in my way if I had pride. I mean, I have ego. I have been hurt. If I didn't have an ego, I would never feel hurt or humiliated. If I didn't have any ego, then I would immediately see right away, always would have seen, that he's doing this or she's doing this because of their own problems and projections and whatever, you know, that it doesn't have anything to do with me personally. But everyone has ego issues to some extent, you know. Some ego issues in some people are extremely convoluted and extremely gigantic. So and in some people there's more clarity in it, and they catch themselves faster, and it's a learning process that never ends, you know, never, no matter how evolved someone is, or no matter how much clarity someone has gained. It's always an evolving process, and it will just keep going. And that's good, you know. Why should we reach a plateau at some point? It will be a plateau, and then we'll be stuck on that. So that's not good. We can rest there for a while, but then we have to strive forward, you know, up forward, and move further and further and further. So it's very important to always try as hard as we can to move forward and to become more and more aware of our needs and of our aspirations and of our limitations, and to find the causalities for it, and then be able to systematically work on it. And I think that's excellent what Alan is doing. It's very, very, very good. You have a lot of clarity, and that's very admirable, and you know exactly your strategy, you know what to work on and how and in which pace, and which things are could be obstacles in that path, and which things to do first and then which things to take on later. That's fantastic, and that's how it goes. That's the process of evolving mentally and learning and healing too. Healing all of those wounds. And then once we have healed those wounds, then there's nothing that can stand in the way of us becoming healers, teachers, shamans, therapists, you know, and we will be of great service to someone else who is in a more beginning phase of this, and we will be able to give assistance to that person so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we can help humanity speed up its healing process in that course. So, take care.